Today we're going to be taking a look at the subject Yahweh Restores. Yahweh Restores. So I actually had an experience where I left my wallet on top of my car, and I was getting in my car to leave, and I had too many things in my hand, I think. So I needed to open the car door. So I set my wallet on top of my car. And as you can imagine, once I got everything loaded in, I got distracted and forgot that my wallet was on top of my car and I started driving. I drove 20 minutes before I realized that I don't know that I didn't have my wallet with me. And so I'm trying to remember where I left the wallet. And then I realized it's not in my car. I left it on top of my car before I drove off. And so you can imagine some of the thoughts in my head. I had already driven 20 minutes from my last destination, but I decided to get in my car and immediately go back to my destination because if it was on top of my car, then possibly it dropped near my destination. So uh, I'm kind of scanning the road as I'm driving back, but this was a highway trip. So as you can imagine, you're not going to easily find your wallet laying on the highway on the way back. So I'm counting on the idea that the wallet might have fallen out off the car at my original departure point. And sure enough, when I got back to my original departure point, there was my wallet lying in the parking lot, just out in the open on the ground. And I go and I scramble, I pick it up, and everything's there. Nothing had been lost. I had another experience that was actually kind of similar when I was in Chicago. I was just there traveling, so I was staying in a hotel, but I couldn't check into the hotel, and I had an appointment with a client that I had to take on the phone. So I sat at a nearby park, took the session with my client, and when I was finished, got up and went to my hotel. Only after I'd been in my hotel did I realize that I left a bag with some electronics in it on the park bench at the park. And so I immediately physically ran from the hotel to the park where this bag had been left. And it had already been more than a half hour because I checked in the hotel. I'd already gotten to my hotel room. When I got back to the bench in the middle of Chicago, right there in the city at this park, there was my bag still sitting there. Everything was in it, it was unharmed. If you've ever had an experience like that, then you know that although it can be exciting, happy, joyful to gain something, it's even more joyful when what you lost is restored. Again, even though you can feel really happy or excited to get a new gift or get a present or get something that's something you wanted, when you gain something back that you already had, it's really special because the thing that you lost was something that was sentimental, right? It had a sentimental value to you. And so we have to understand as Christians that we will lose things, but God will restore the things that we've lost. Well, if we're Christians, then isn't it the case that our life is supposed to be good now and we're supposed to have no issues and have no loss and our family is just supposed to become happy and united and we experience nothing but peace? Well, of course, it's not that simple, is it? If we take a look at Jesus' words in Luke chapter 12, we get a better perspective of what we're signing up for as his followers. This is Luke chapter 12. and verse 51. Luke 12:51 says, "Do you think I came to give peace on the earth? No, I tell you, but rather division. From now on, there will be five in one household divided, three against two, and two against three. They will be divided, father against son, and son against father, mother against daughter, and daughter against mother, mother in law against daughter in law, and daughter in law against mother in law." Well, reading a scripture like this can be sobering, right? Because we thought everything would be better once we became servants of God, but it's really not that simple. In fact, our experience of being Christ followers is that we may find the opposite of peace in our life, especially in the beginning. For a time, you'll find actual division in your own households, he says. You will actually lose your relationships with some of the people who were once your closest, who meant the most to you. This is because there is a difference in those who are true toward Christ and those whose heart is not true toward him. And so it will create a war. And this war is not necessarily physical, doesn't mean there's going to be violence, but the war that we're experiencing is a spiritual warfare, so that many in the household who once were supportive of you, who were showing that love for you, may become bitter, enraged, may start to become standoffish toward you, may become mean or rude, may withdraw their support from you. Those who are your family members may not support you studying the Bible, changing your life, healing, growing, making progress without them. And maybe because they originally appreciated the influence they had over you or the power that they had over you. And so now they're not excited to see you becoming independent in your thinking and mindset and your ability, not depending on them anymore. They may not be excited to see you becoming enlightened and empowered with knowledge and wisdom. So, what happens if we do lose our relationship with our family? What happens if it's your parents and you were staying with them and they kick you out or they disown you? Or what if you lose your relationship with your adult children? What if some of them uh, become such that they're too toxic, poisonous to continue to be around for your spiritual health? So you take your distance from them because they don't want to change their lifestyle and their behavior. What can we trust in when it comes to our God, knowing that we've lost our home, knowing that we've lost our relationship with our parents? Maybe you worked with them, so you can lose your job. Well, we have promises and we have guarantees that we can rest on as Christians, as followers of Christ. At Matthew chapter 19, Jesus talks of this promise. This is Matthew chapter 19. We're going to verse 49. I'm sorry, 29. Matthew 19, verse 29. And there it says, "And everyone who has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or lands for the sake of my name will receive 100 times as much and will inherit everlasting life." That's a promise that feels good to receive, isn't it? Everyone that has left houses or brothers or sisters or father or mother or children or lands for the sake of my name, he knows that his people will have to lose what they once had. He understands that his people will give up, will be sacrificing what they once had. But why is this? Why does it have to be division? Why can't there be peace? Why does there have to be loss? It's because of who is here on earth causing chaos. We know that according to Revelation chapter 12, verse 7 through 9, the devil is here on earth, misleading, causing chaos and ruin. As a result, this earth is not united and in peace. It is not in harmony under God. It is divided. And so, no, we will not have peace, not total peace in our lives on this earth as long as Satan is here. When we choose the side of our God, we will not have total peace, but we do have this promise that anything we lose, anything we have to give up, anything we have to sacrifice, we will receive it 100 times as much, and we will receive everlasting life. If you go to Job chapter 42, we're reminded of the example of the faithful servant Job, who lost everything. Do you remember that? The devil made a challenge to God that he could get Job to break his integrity, and he failed. He took away Job's children, his livestock, his fields, his business, took away Job's health. It killed his servants. And there was nothing that Job could lose that would stop him from being faithful and keeping his integrity to God. So at Job chapter 42, it shows in verse 12, so Yahweh blessed the last part of Job's life more than the beginning. And Job came to have 14,000 sheep, 6,000 camels, 1,000 pairs of cattle, 1,000 female donkeys. And he also had 7 more sons and 3 more daughters. So everything that Job lost, he got double in return, because he'd only lost 7,000 sheep, but now he got 14,000 sheep. He had only lost 3,000 camels, but now he got 6,000 camels, and so on. And it says he got the same number of children that he lost. Well, how come he didn't get double the children? Because of the everlasting life. Because when God's kingdom comes and brings paradise to the earth, and Job is resurrected, so will his children who had died, all of them, so that he will have double the amount of his children as well. So truly, Yahweh blesses 100-fold, twice what we've lost. You will gain. It will be restored. And this gives us a reason to put trust and to put faith in our God. If you remember last week, we were talking about David and everything that David lost. That was in that last scripture I just read was at Job 42:10. David was originally just poor, but then when he conquered Goliath, he received accolades, respect from everyone in Israel, and then he got to live with the king in his household with his best friend Jonathan, who was a son of the king. He's playing harp for the king. David had a good life now. But as you remember, Saul became jealous of David, tried to kill David, and David had to go on the run. Now David is in the wilderness, just running for his life. But interestingly, he starts to get a new tribe. So even though he lost, his old friends, his family are all left behind in the nation, and he's out here alone. Although he starts alone, he doesn't stay alone. He doesn't remain that way. More and more men start to join up with David. and they start to have a purpose to fight on the outskirts of Israel to continue to defend God's nation. At 1 Samuel chapter 30, we rejoin David, and at this point, he's got hundreds of men with him, I believe around 500 men. This is 1 Samuel chapter 30. And he's already has 2 wives. He has livestock. He has spoil from the enemy nations that he was conquering, from the marauder bands that he's been fighting off. His men have wives and they have children as well. So things are actually going well for them. And then this happens. This is 1 Samuel chapter 30. It says, when David and his men came to Ziklag on the 3rd day, the Amalekites had made a raid on the south on Ziklag, and they had attacked Ziklag and burned it with fire. They had taken captive the women and all who were in it, from the smallest to the greatest. They had not killed anyone, but they had carried them off and gone on their way. When David and his men came to the city, they found it burned, and their wives and their sons and their daughters had been carried off captive. So David and the men with him began weeping loudly until they had no strength left to weep. David's 2 wives had also been carried off, Ahinoam of Jezreel and Abigail, the widow of Nabal, the Carmelite. David was very distressed because the men were talking of stoning him, for all the men had become very bitter over the loss of their sons and daughters. But David strengthened himself by Yahweh, his God. David then said to Abiathar the priest, the son of Ahimelech, please bring the ephod here. So Abiathar brought the ephod to David, and David inquired of Yahweh, saying, should I chase after this marauder band? Will I overtake them? At this, he said to him, go in pursuit, for you will certainly overtake them, and you will make the rescue. David immediately set out with 600 men who were with him, and they went on as far as Wadi Besor, where some of the men stayed behind. David kept up the chase with the 400 men, but the 200 men who were too tired to cross to Wadi Besor stayed behind. They found an Egyptian man in the field and took him to David. They gave him food and water to drink, as well as a slice of cake and pressed figs and 2 cakes of raisins, and after he ate, he regained his strength, for he had not eaten food or drunk any water for 3 days and 3 nights. And David now asked him, to whom do you belong, and where are you from? At which he said, I am an Egyptian attendant, a son of an Amalekite man, but my master left me because I got sick 3 days ago. We made a raid on the south of the Cherethites and the territory of Judah, and on the south of Caleb and Ziklag we burned with fire. At this, David said to him, will you lead me down to this marauder band? He replied, if you swear to me by God that you will not put me to death, that you will not hand me over to my master, I will lead you to this marauder band. So he led them down to where they were spread out over the land, eating and drinking and celebrating because of all the great spoil they had taken from the land of the Philistines and the land of Judah. Then David struck them down from the morning darkness until the following evening. Not a man escaped, except 400 men who fled on camels. David recovered all the Amalekites had taken. David rescued his 2 wives. Nothing of theirs was missing, from the smallest to the greatest. They recovered their sons and daughters and the spoil. David recovered everything that they had taken. And David took all the flocks and the herds, which they drove out before their own livestock. And they said, "This is David's spoil." Did you notice the situation that David was put in? He got back to Ziklag. Imagine he had already lost everything in Israel. Now things were finally starting to look up for him. Things were finally starting to become comfortable, and he lost everything again. The enemy marauder band had come in and taken everything, the sons, the daughters, the wives. They took them all captive. They took all the money. They took all the livestock. And he comes back and everything just burnt with fire. He doesn't know what happened to his families. The men are distraught. They were so upset that they wanted to stone David, because obviously David, being the leader, had to take responsibility for the fact that they had just been robbed. But in this moment of distress, who did David turn to? Yes, he prayed. Going to his father, he asked if he should go forward, and Yahweh gave him the victory, and he got back everything. There's nothing like having restored what you lost, because those things have special value to us, sentimental value. But our God, the God that we serve, is a God of restoration. He will restore what we've lost, and he will give us 10 times more, 100 times, or twice what we've lost. In fact, this wasn't the only thing that David regained. David eventually went back to Israel, right? He didn't stay on the run his whole life. When he received news that Saul had died, and we're going to go to 2 Samuel chapter 2, David went back to Israel to regain his throne. This is 2 Samuel chapter 2. He wasn't happy to hear that Saul died, but after he mourned Saul's death appropriately, at 2 Samuel chapter 2 and verse 4, it says, "Then the men of Judah came, and there they anointed David as king over the house of Judah." So, as normal, David prayed in verse 2, chapter 2, verse 1, to Yahweh and said, "Should I go up to one of the cities of Judah?" And Yahweh said, "Go up." So he went back to his nation, and he was installed as king, which was his rightful position. It doesn't mean everything was perfect, but eventually, after some fighting, he actually took back his original wife, Saul's daughter, Micah, and he regained everything that he lost. He was reunited with his family, and he took throne in Israel. This is a great lesson for us to recognize that the God we serve is a God of restoration. Anything we lose now, anything we have to sacrifice now in order to keep our integrity to God, he will restore to us. And as I mentioned, in the situation with my wallet, and when I lost that bag and I gained those things back, it's a special feeling regaining what was lost. But when is this going to happen for us? When are we going to get back the things that we've lost, the things that we've sacrificed? Jesus taught his servants to pray, "Let your kingdom come." When God's kingdom, which is a government or rulership, comes to earth, it is going to destroy all the nations that stand on this earth today. It is not going to be well received by these nations, because these nations are under the control and the influence of Satan, the devil. That is why we don't get caught up in the politics of these nations. That is why we don't get caught up in the wars of these nations, because there's going to be a great war that is fought when all of these nations gather against God's kingdom. But we know his kingdom will be victorious. and it will bring peace to this earth so that it will be here on earth as it is in heaven. Well, what will that be like? Well, let's take a peek. Isaiah chapter 65. We're going to look at verse 21. This is Isaiah 65, 21. It says, they will build houses and live in them, and they will plant vineyards and eat their fruitage. They will not build for someone else to inhabit, nor will they plant for others to eat. For the days of my people will be like the days of a tree, and the work of their hands my chosen ones will enjoy to the full. They will not toil for nothing, nor will they bear children for distress, because they are the offspring made up of those blessed by Yahweh, and their descendants with them. Even before they call out, I will answer. While they are yet speaking, I will hear. The wolf and the lamb will feed together. The lion will eat straw, just like the bull, and the serpent's food will be dust. They will do no harm, nor cause any ruin in all my holy mountain, says Yahweh. Isn't this a beautiful picture? Can you imagine living on earth, not having to worry about making a living? Because each person has enough land where they can plant vineyards and grow food and share with their neighbors. You can have your house and build it to your own specifications. Everything that you would want, you will have, and you will enjoy the work of your hand instead of just going to work for someone else merely to survive. And we won't have to worry about our children going off and playing, worried about their safety, because God will be there. It says you'll be able to call him and he will answer. Imagine living like that in a society not alienated from God, but one that's close to God, one that's protected, and even will be in harmony with nature. You'll see a wolf just laying there next to a lamb, and the wolf is not attacking and eating the lamb, but everything is harmonious. In Isaiah chapter 11, it actually mentions a little bit about paradise on earth under God's kingdom as well. This is Isaiah chapter 11 and verse 6. It says, the wolf will reside for a while with the lamb, and the young goat and the leopard will lie down, and the calf and the lion and the fattened animal will all be together, and a little boy will lead them. The cow and the bear will feed together, and their young will lie down together. A lion will eat straw, just like the bull. The nursing child will play over the lair of a cobra, and a weaned child will put his hand over the den of the poisonous snake. They will cause no ruin nor any harm in all my holy mountain, because the earth will certainly be filled with the knowledge of Yahweh as the waters cover the sea. It's a beautiful picture, isn't it? Not only are we regaining everything we've lost, but we will keep everything that we're gaining there. It will be blessings beyond everything we had here on this earth. So let us keep our faith and our integrity to God so that we can be there and experience the restoration that our God has for us.